if this was a place in which a synagogue was built, it stands to reason that it was a place of veneration. Veneration of what? We don't know the answer for sure, but there's an awfully compelling theory. Who is the first king of the house of David who was not buried in the city of David? That first king would be King Manasseh. In the second book of Kings, chapter 21, verse 18, Manasseh lay with his fathers and was buried in the garden of his own house, in the garden of Uzzah, same place where his son Ammon was buried as well. Where was the garden of Uzzah? Well, we really don't know for sure, but there's good reason to believe the garden of Uzzah was right here. Why? Well, perhaps most of all, because King Manasseh was not a popular king. In the second book of Kings, chapter 21, verse 16, we read, Manasseh shed innocent blood very much, till he had filled Jerusalem from one end to another. A king like that is likely to build his house in the highest, most defensible, most impregnable location possible. And as becomes very clear in looking at a contoured map of Jerusalem, we are almost at the highest point of Jerusalem in the time of Hezekiah and Manasseh. So this is a likely location for Manasseh's house and his garden. But why would he, of all people, be a place of pilgrimage and veneration? Manasseh, after all, was the worst king Judah ever had. As we read in graphic and jarring detail in the second book of Kings, chapter 21, he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, like the abominations of the nations, whom the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And there's a very long list of his atrocities. Why in the world would he be someone whom we would venerate? Tantalizingly, you can search through the entire book of Kings from cover to cover. You'll never find an answer. But there is an answer. It's not in the book of Kings, it's in the book of Chronicles. In the second book of Chronicles, chapter 33, from verse 10, we read something extraordinary. And the Lord spoke to Manasseh and to his people, but they did not listen. Wherefore, the Lord brought upon them the captains of the host of the king of Assyria, who took Manasseh with hooks and bound him with fetters and carried him to Babylon. And when he was in distress, he entreated the Lord his God and humbled himself greatly before the God of his fathers. And he prayed to him. And he, God, was entreated of him and heard his supplication and brought him back to Jerusalem into his kingdom. Then Manasseh knew that the Lord, he was God. And we read of the new Manasseh in the verses that follow, the repentant Manasseh. And he built up the altar of the Lord and offered thereon sacrifices of peace offerings and thanksgiving, and commanded Judah to serve the Lord, the God of Israel. Manasseh, ironically, because of the abominations that he had committed beforehand, personifies returning to God. He may not have been worthy of the repentance that God granted him, but by his repenting, by his returning in earnest to God, God accepted him. And of course, the take-home message, God is ready to accept us all. All we need to do is to be ready to return to him. As expressed in Psalm 90, verse 3, you bring man to the crushing point and say, return, O you children of men.